My name is Ava, and I still remember that afternoon as clearly as if it just happened yesterday. I was sitting alone in my small rented apartment in Europe, the kind with thin walls and a window that barely kept the cold out. My desk was cluttered with papers, coffee cups, and a laptop that had become my entire world over the past few years. I had spent so many late nights working, pushing myself harder than anyone expected, including me. That day, when I opened my email and saw the subject line, my heart started racing before I even clicked it. It was real. I had been promoted to vice president. For a few seconds, I just stared at the screen, trying to take it in. Vice president at 26. It felt unreal, like I had skipped years of life somehow. I stood up, pacing around my apartment, laughing quietly to myself. I thought about all the sacrifices, the weekends I didn't go out, the friendships I let fade, the constant pressure I put on myself to be better, faster, stronger. And now, finally, it meant something. It all meant something. The first thing I wanted to do was call my parents. I picked up my phone without even thinking and dialed their number. I could already imagine how it would go. My mom would sound surprised, then excited. She might even call my dad over so I could tell him too. Maybe they would say they were proud of me. I realized how much I needed to hear that. "Hello?" my mom answered. "Mom," I said quickly, my voice almost shaking with excitement. "I have news. I got promoted. I'm VP now." There was a pause on the other end. Not a long one, but long enough for me to notice. "That's great, Sophia," she said. Her voice sounded calm, almost too calm. "Really great." I waited, expecting more, questions, excitement, something. Instead, she continued, "But could you not mention it at Thanksgiving?" I frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" "Your sister is struggling right now," she said gently. "Your success just makes him feel bad about himself." Her words hit me in a way I didn't expect. I stood still in the middle of my apartment, the happiness I had felt just moments ago starting to slip away. I thought about my sister, Elena, and how things had always been between us, how she compared herself to me, how my parents always tried to keep things balanced. "Oh," I said quietly. "Okay." I didn't argue. I didn't ask more questions. I just accepted it. We ended the call soon after that, and I slowly lowered my phone, staring at the floor. The room felt different now, smaller somehow. My achievement, which had felt so big just minutes ago, now felt like something I needed to shrink, to hide, to make less visible. I sat back down at my desk, looking again at the email that had changed everything. The words were still there, still real. But the feeling had changed. That was the moment I didn't fully understand at the time, but looking back now, it was the beginning of my silence. After that call with my mom, something inside me shifted in a quiet but permanent way. At first, I didn't even realize it was happening. Life continued as normal on the outside. I still went to work every day, still led meetings, still made decisions that affected people twice my age. But inside, I had started holding things back. Not out of anger, not even out of sadness exactly, but out of a strange need to protect myself. The first thing I stopped sharing was my bonus. A few months after my promotion, I received $45,000 for my performance. I remember staring at the number, feeling proud and relieved at the same time. It wasn't just money, it was proof that all those late nights and sacrifices had been worth it. My first instinct was, again, to call my parents. But then I paused. I could already hear my mom's voice in my head, gentle but careful, asking me to keep it quiet for Elena's sake. So I didn't call. I just closed my phone and sat there alone, letting the moment pass without telling anyone from my family. That became a pattern. At work, things kept improving. I was given a bigger team, more responsibility, and more trust. People started looking at me differently, with respect and sometimes even admiration. I became someone others depended on, someone whose opinion mattered. It felt good, but it also felt strange not being able to share that part of my life with the people who were supposed to know me best. Not long after, I was offered a new opportunity, one that would take me from Europe to America. It was a major step forward, with a salary of $180,000 a year and a position that would put me even higher up in the company. I remember sitting in the office when my manager told me, my heart beating fast again, just like the day I got promoted. This was everything I had worked toward. And yet, when I accepted the offer, I didn't tell my parents. I told myself I would call them later, maybe after things settled down. But days passed, then weeks, and I never made that call. It wasn't that I didn't care. It was that I didn't want to feel that same quiet disappointment again, that same sense that my happiness needed to be adjusted to fit someone else's feelings. Moving to America was both exciting and lonely. I arrived in a new city where everything felt bigger, the buildings, the streets, even the expectations. My new apartment was nicer than the one I had left behind, with large windows that let in sunlight and a view of the city skyline. Still, the first few nights felt quiet in a way I wasn't used to. That's when I met Daniel. He lived in the apartment above mine and had a habit of knocking on my door at unexpected times, usually with coffee in his hand. The first time we met, he smiled and said, "You look like someone who just moved in and doesn't know where to find good coffee yet." I laughed, surprised by how easy it felt to talk to him. He wasn't trying to impress anyone, he was just kind in a simple, genuine way. Then there was Clara, a colleague at work who quickly became more than that. She was confident, direct, and always knew how to make me laugh after a long day. We started having lunch together, then coffee, then dinners that lasted hours. She asked me questions about my life, my past, my family. Sometimes I answered honestly, but other times I kept things vague. It wasn't that I didn't trust her. I just wasn't used to sharing anymore. As months passed, my life in America grew fuller. I built routines, made connections, and found small moments of happiness in everyday things. Morning walks, late-night talks with Clara, unexpected visits from Daniel. From the outside, everything looked complete. But there was still that distance. My parents would call occasionally, asking how I was doing. I always gave simple answers. "I'm good. Work is busy. Everything's fine." They didn't know about the promotion in detail, the bonus, the move, or how much my life had changed. And the more time passed, the harder it became to tell them. It started to feel like there was too much they didn't know, like I had already crossed a line that I couldn't easily go back from. Sometimes, late at night, I would sit by my window and think about it. I would wonder what would have happened if that first phone call had gone differently. If my mom had been excited, if she had told me she was proud without hesitation. Maybe I would have kept sharing everything. Maybe things wouldn't feel so distant now. But that wasn't what happened. Instead, I learned how to live my life quietly. I learned how to celebrate my achievements on my own or with people who had only recently become part of my world. I learned how to hold back the instinct to pick up the phone and share good news. Silence, at first, had felt uncomfortable. It felt like something temporary, something I would eventually fix. But over time, it became normal. And once something becomes normal, you stop questioning it. You stop noticing how much has changed. You just keep going, step by step, building a life that looks complete from the outside, even if parts of it are carefully hidden. By the end of that year, I had everything I once dreamed of, a successful career, financial stability, and a new life in America. But I also had something I hadn't planned for. Distance. Not the kind measured in miles between Europe and America, but the kind that grows quietly between people when words go unspoken for too long. 2 years after I moved to America, I bought a house. Even now, saying that feels unreal. I used to dream about something like that when I was younger, having a place that was fully mine, where every wall, every corner, every small detail reflected who I was. Back then, it felt far away, like something that would happen much later in life. Not at 28. Not this soon. But there I was, sitting in a quiet office with a real estate agent, signing papers for a house worth $520,000. My hands were steady, but inside, I felt a mix of excitement and disbelief. I had saved carefully, worked endlessly, and made decisions that brought me to that exact moment. No one had handed this to me. I had built it, step by step. The house itself was simple, but beautiful in a way that felt calm and honest. It had white walls, large windows that filled the rooms with light, and wooden floors that made soft sounds when you walked across them. There was a small garden in the back, not perfect, but full of potential. I remember standing there for the first time, holding the keys in my hand, feeling like I had finally reached something I had been chasing for years. My first thought was to call my parents. It happened automatically, like a habit I had never fully lost. I reached for my phone, even unlocked it. But then I stopped. I stood in the empty living room, the sound of silence around me, and I remembered that call from years ago. The careful tone. The quiet request. The feeling of shrinking something that meant everything to me. Slowly, I put my phone down. Instead, I called Clara. "You did what?" she shouted the moment I told her. "I bought a house," I said. laughing a little, finally letting the excitement out. "Sophia, that's huge. I'm coming over right now." She didn't wait for an invitation. Within an hour, she was standing in my doorway, looking around with wide eyes and a smile that made everything feel real. "This is yours?" she asked. "Yeah," I said softly. "It is." Later that evening, Daniel came by too, carrying a bottle of wine like he always did when something needed celebrating. The three of us sat on the floor in the living room because I hadn't bought furniture yet. We talked, laughed, and imagined what the place would look like once it was fully set up. "You need a big couch here," Daniel said, pointing to one side of the room. "And plants," Clara added. "Lots of plants. This place needs life." For the first time in a long while, I felt completely happy without holding anything back. No hesitation, no careful words, just pure, simple joy. But even in that moment, there was a small part of me that noticed who wasn't there. I ignored it. Days turned into weeks, and I slowly started turning the house into a home. I bought furniture, chose colors, and spent weekends fixing small things around the place. Every change made it feel more like mine. Every detail reminded me of how far I had come. Still, I didn't tell my parents. At first, I told myself I would mention it casually during one of our calls. But every time they called, the conversation stayed the same. "How are you?" "I'm good." "How's work?" "Busy, but fine." It became easier not to say anything than to explain everything. Then one evening, my phone rang, and I saw my mom's name on the screen. I answered like I always did, expecting another simple conversation. But this time was different. "Sophia," she said, her voice already carrying something I couldn't quite place, "why didn't you tell us you bought a house?" My heart skipped. For a moment, I didn't speak. I wasn't expecting that question. Not like this, not so directly. "How did you find out?" I asked. "Your aunt mentioned it," she replied. "She saw something online." "Is it true?" I looked around my living room, now filled with furniture, light, and all the small touches I had added over time. It felt strange to suddenly have this part of my life pulled into the open. "Yes," I said quietly. "It's true." There was a pause, heavier this time. "Why didn't you tell us?" she asked. "Why are you being so secretive and cold lately?" Cold. That word stayed in the air between us. I didn't feel cold. If anything, I felt too much. But I didn't know how to explain that in a way she would understand. "I didn't think it was a big deal," I said, even though I knew that wasn't entirely true. "Not a big deal," she repeated. "Sophia, buying a house is a big deal. We're your family. We should know these things." I closed my eyes for a second, trying to steady myself. "I just didn't think it mattered," I said, choosing my words carefully. "It matters to us," she said, her voice softer now but still hurt. "We feel like you're shutting us out." That wasn't my intention. Or maybe, in some quiet way, it was. After we ended the call, I sat alone in the same living room where I had once celebrated with Clara and Daniel. Everything was the same, the furniture, the soft light, the quiet, but it felt different now. I looked around and realized that this house, which meant so much to me, had become part of a story my parents didn't know. Not because I wanted to hurt them, but because, somewhere along the way, I had learned that sharing my happiness came with conditions. And without even fully realizing it, I had chosen silence instead. That night, after my call with my mom, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying her words over and over in my mind. Secretive. Cold. Those weren't words I had ever imagined my parents would use to describe me. If anything, I had always been the one who tried harder, the one who called first, who shared more, who wanted to stay close no matter how busy life became. But somewhere along the way, that version of me had changed. I got up and walked slowly through my house. The floors creaked softly under my feet, and the lights cast long shadows on the walls. This house was everything I had worked for. Every corner held a piece of my effort, my discipline, my choices. It should have felt warm, full, complete. Instead, it felt quiet in a way that made me think. I stopped in the living room and sat down on the couch, pulling my knees close. I thought about the day I bought this place, how excited I had been, how I had almost called my parents without thinking. That instinct had been real. It had always been there. So what changed? The answer came to me slowly, but clearly. Nothing had changed in one big moment. It had happened little by little, starting with that first phone call years ago. The moment when I was asked, gently but firmly, to make my success smaller so someone else wouldn't feel uncomfortable. At the time, I told myself it was reasonable, that it was just one request, that it didn't matter. But it did matter, because after that, every piece of good news felt like something I had to measure before sharing. Every achievement came with a quiet question, will this make someone else feel bad? And eventually, it became easier not to say anything at all. I wasn't trying to punish anyone. I wasn't trying to create distance. I was just trying not to feel that same disappointment again. The next morning, I woke up still thinking about everything. I made coffee, sat by the window, and watched the city slowly come to life. People walked by, cars passed, and everything outside moved forward like normal. But inside me, something felt unfinished. I realized I couldn't keep avoiding this. So I picked up my phone and called my mom. When she answered, her voice was softer than the night before. "Hello." "Hi, Mom," I said. My voice was calm, but my heart was beating fast. "Can we talk?" "Of course," she replied. I took a deep breath, trying to find the right words. Not perfect words, just honest ones. "I'm not trying to be cold," I said. "I know it feels that way, but that's not what this is." There was silence on the other end, but it didn't feel distant this time. It felt like she was listening. "I think I just stopped sharing things," I continued. "Not all at once. It just happened over time." "Why?" she asked quietly. I hesitated for a moment, but then I said it, because it started to feel like I had to make myself smaller. The words hung there between us. "I remember when I told you about my promotion," I added. "I was really excited. I wanted to share that with you. But when you asked me not to talk about it, it felt like my happiness was something I needed to hide." "I didn't mean it like that," she said quickly. "I just didn't want anyone to feel hurt." "I understand that," I said gently. But I felt hurt. There was a long pause. I could almost hear her thinking, trying to see things from my side. "I didn't realize that," she said finally, her voice quieter now. "I know," I replied. "And I'm not angry. I think that moment changed something for me. After that, it became harder to share things. So I stopped." Another pause, but this one felt different. It wasn't filled with tension. It felt like something was slowly opening. "I am proud of you, Sophia," she said after a while. "I've always been proud of you." I closed my eyes, letting those words settle in. "I needed to hear that," I said softly. "I'm sorry if I made you feel like you had to hide your success," she added. I didn't respond right away. Not because I didn't accept it, but because I was still processing everything. "I don't want us to be distant," she continued. "I don't want you to feel like you can't tell us things." "I don't want that either," I said. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like we were actually talking, not just exchanging words, but understanding something deeper. After we ended the call, I sat there for a while, holding my phone in my hand. Nothing was magically fixed. There were still things to work through, still a gap that wouldn't disappear overnight. But something had shifted. I had said what I felt, honestly and without holding back. And maybe that was the first step, not toward a perfect relationship, but toward a real one. Because this is my life. And I don't want to live it quietly anymore.